Hello and welcome to Radiant Freedom Digital Marketing. And today we'll be going over the final part of Top 10 Conversion Rate Principles You Need to Know. This is part 3. Again, joining us is Deborah O'Malley from Guess the Test. And she'll be going over principles 5 through 10. So over to you, Deborah, and let's get right into it.
All right, so principle number 5 is really important when it comes to focusing your visitor and directing their eyes to the right spots on your web page. So eye tracking studies, which look at how the eye moves, show that the eye really follows a natural path on a web page, and you can use that knowledge to direct your visitors to where you want them looking. So here in version A of the picture, you see a cute little baby with its head kind of looking at the text on the screen. Here in version B, you see the exact same thing, but the baby is looking head on at you and not looking at the text. Now, Jason, tell me what you notice between these two pictures.
Well, I noticed that there definitely seems to be a lot more attention going to the text when the baby's looking at the text.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly it. And so these things in eye tracking are called hotspots, and the bigger and darker the hotspot, the more attention it shows has been focused. So you can see here, exact same picture, exact same text, but here when the baby is looking at the text, it forces the eye to look at the text too, or I should say directs the eye more than forces. Here, people spent most of the time looking at the baby and the baby's face, and that's not unusual to this experiment. It's not just because it's a cute baby. People tend to look predominantly at faces in pictures, and they tend to look predominantly at the eyes. So if you want to establish trustworthiness and credibility, you want to have a picture or a headshot where your eyes are looking straight on at the person, because it really creates an image of accessibility. However, if you want to direct the eyes to the text or to a certain call to action that you have, using visual cues like in this picture, where you're pointing the person to your text, is a really, really great way to do that. So here's a really good example. This is an actual real life site that I worked on with some team members, and you can see you can't get much more obvious than literally directing the person to your call to action.
Yeah, literally a finger pointing right at it.
Definitely. So just kind of as a follow-up summary for you, just keep in mind when you're designing your sites or when you're trying to optimize your site, eyes really do follow a natural pattern, and you can use this phenomenon to your advantage to select pictures that visually point people to your important text and your call to action buttons.
Yeah, one thing I noticed when you're, and this actually is a good example of that as well, is you notice you see those like patterns that form kind of like a letter E or an F, which is something I've been taught when I was studying.
Definitely, and that actually relates to this next point here, which is that typically people tend to read in what's called an F-shaped pattern, and this is just the way, in English anyway, that our eyes naturally move. So we start at the top left of the screen, we scan across, and we scan down. We choose another point on the screen, we stop here, we scan across, and we scan down. And typically on websites, we continue to do that throughout the site. And it's really important to note that, first of all, this area here is your most important and most valuable screen real estate. It's what people will tend to see first. It's called the golden triangle. But also that people tend to read in an F-shaped pattern, or scan more appropriately, I should say, in an F-shaped pattern, and they're probably not reading your content word for word. They're probably scanning it quickly to find information or things that they want. And you can see that depending on the website, that F-shaped pattern kind of takes different forms or different sort of blobby variables in the form of an F, but the behavior persists across different websites and across different reasons for being on the site. Now, there is some studies that show that depending on the task that the user is given, they'll read slightly differently. So if you're going to read a research paper and then report on it, you're probably going to be more comprehensive in your reading than if you're just quickly looking at a retail website where you're trying to decide if you're going to buy something or not. But across the site, people tend to read in that general F-shaped pattern that emerges. So really the important takeaway for you is to realize that that golden triangle, the topmost left part of your screen, is really, really valuable screen real estate, and you don't want to waste it with something that's not going to get you any further in terms of conversions. So
Absolutely.
just as a summary, um, as I mentioned, the task that the user has will influence the way that they read, but in general, people read in an F-shaped pattern. You want to think about how people read and use white space appropriately to break up your text so that people can read in that F-shaped pattern. It's important to have white space, but it's also important to realize there is such thing as too much white space or wasted white space, and so you don't want to have that either. You want appropriate spacing that makes things quickly scannable. And a really great way to visually delineate content is through headlines, style elements, bullet points. These are all really great features you can use to make scanning easy for your reader so that they can quickly go through your content. And Jason, as you well know, a descriptive headline with the right keywords is particularly important for SEO.
Absolutely. And especially you do not want to present people with a wall of text. That's going to drive people away from your website faster
For
than
sure,
just about anything other than it taking too long to load.
definitely. So next is, I find a really, really fascinating topic, which is search. Search is so key to the way that we use websites now, and there's whole websites devoted around search. Google, for example, Bing is another example. Search is just absolutely integrated with the way people navigate websites, and the same is true on an e-commerce website as well. There's some studies that have found people who use site search are almost 2 times more likely to convert on your site. And for e-commerce, the conversion rates can dramatically increase with having a visually prominent search bar. So Jason, with that in mind, here's a real life test. With this, version A had just a standard search bar. This is an e-commerce site called Natchez, and they sell kind of outdoor military equipment. In this test, they made one simple change. They doubled the search bar size on the home page only, and I want you to really keep that in mind. It's only on the home page that they doubled the search bar size. Which version do you think won?
I would say version B because increasing the search bar size made it much more visible and much, it feels more inviting for me to use it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, you're absolutely right. It was indeed version B with the doubled size search bar. So not only did increasing the search bar size increase conversions, but it increased conversions all the way down the funnel. So this change was only made on the homepage, but revenue, which is the very bottom of the funnel, it's the last thing you can get out of your customer, it increased by 7.5%. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but it's huge when you consider how much revenue can be if you're selling, let's say, $100 items or $150 items. So it shows the simple power of doubling a search bar size, making it more visually prominent, and you said more inviting, can really have a huge impact from the top of your funnel all the way down to the bottom of your funnel. So having a search bar at all may be a key feature that you want to have on your site. And within reason, search bars that are bigger truly do seem to be better. Now, it's not always possible to increase the search bar size, especially on mobile themes that can't easily be customized, but you want to think about the best way to get your search bar noticeable and visually prominent and easy to use. And also you need to think about, obviously, your audience and the needs that they have on your site. And if some sites don't need a search bar at all, that's okay. But on any site where you can search content or you can search products, think about that and think about the impact of creating a prominent search bar, and ideally test those things and find what works well for your audience.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next principle that I found really truly works well, and this is a site that I've personally worked on optimizing myself, is working to ensure trust and credibility. Trust and credibility is so huge, especially for e-tail clients, and creating subtle visual cues can truly help improve revenue and your bottom line. So it's really crucial to find the right spots to include trust and credibility and the right way to present trust and credibility. And one valuable way to do that is through trust badges or symbols. So here's a really fun test. In version A, there was trust symbols, but they were at the bottom of the page. You had to scroll down pretty far to see them. In version B, the trust symbols here, they're in light gray, so they don't really hit you as soon as you come on the page, but they're kind of subtly, visually there, maybe almost unconsciously. They show where the product was featured. So they're like as featured in logos. Jason, which version do you think won?
Well, first I'm going to put that question to the viewers on YouTube. So in the comments section down below, and don't cheat, put down which version you think won. And then, of course, Deborah will tell us what it is. And for me, I would say version B, where you have the trust symbols above the fold.
Okay,
That would help.
and you are absolutely right. Just simply moving the trust symbols above the fold so that they were subtle but also noticeable had an incredible 7.7% increase in revenue. And this change, while the test was running, translated to over 10K in additional revenue for the company in a little over a week. So simply moving trust and credibility symbols up higher to where they're visually prominent, as Jason said, above the fold, can make a huge difference for you and for your sales. So consider that, test it, see the optimal placement for you. But so far in every study that I've come across, having it kind of right below your hero image, reminder that this is the hero image, the big, large, prominent image, having it right here seems to be the most effective way in every study that I've seen.
Also keep in mind that the cost for these changes, widening a search bar, relocating contents, is really quite minimal because you're using assets you already have, just slightly different ways. So
for sure.
when you
Yeah,
talk
there's
about cost benefit,
minimal development time to set up and run a test like this. Pretty much anyone who knows how to use A/B testing software can set up a test like this and run it, and it's very minimal risk. That's the great thing about setting up and running a test, is only 50% of your traffic sees it if it doesn't work. And if it does work, well, then you can bring in an additional, however many K in revenue through seeing that the winning version works. And then once you know it works for sure, you can implement it and the revenue keeps rolling in. So it's a fantastic foolproof way to test out and tease your ideas. So as a kind of summary, you really want to work to establish trust and credibility on your site. That's really an important thing to do. You can use things like as seen in logos or trust seals or customer reviews. Those are all things that will help bring credibility to your site. One important thing is you don't want customers clicking off your site. So let's say they get distracted by the, oh, glamour, and they go and click on that and they're off your site. That's not a great thing. You've just lost that customer potentially. So when you are using trust and credibility symbols, think about making the logo appear but not linkable, so that you're keeping the customer on your site. You don't want them getting distracted. And as with everything, you really need to.
Alternatively, another way you can also keep the customer on your site if you want to link them is make sure that it's set to open the link up in a new window or tab, so that way they go to the other site but stay on your site too.
That's definitely an option. So trust and credibility can really go a long way in establishing a relationship with your customers. And as I mentioned, trust and credibility comes in many different aspects. Some people may not have logos that have featured their site, but you may be able to use trust seals or trust symbols, especially around the checkout. And these are some great symbols that can be used if they apply to your site. And they can really enhance the sense of trust about the security of your website and motivate a hesitant viewer to go through and actually, click that buy now button or click the checkout button. So trust and credibility comes in many different forms. Figure out what's best for you to use it on your site and then apply these logos where most appropriate. All right, so as Jason can well tell you, site speed really, really matters with optimization. It's not just about your SEO, it's also about CRO. And a fast loading site is crucial for any kind of optimization with regards to CRO. The longer that it takes your site to load, the more likely people are to bounce. So you can see in this graphic here, if your site is taking about 10 seconds to load, the probability that people are going to leave it and bounce, which means coming to your site and immediately leaving, increases by over 123%. That's huge. So as Jason has probably told you before, you want to work to have your site ideally load under about 4 seconds. That's kind of the golden point, and anything less is even more ideal. And having your site load quickly is going to create a positive experience for your users and ensure that they don't bounce. Jason, do you have anything to add to that?
Some key things you can do to help improve your site speed is using tools like caching and file compression, as well as making sure that if you're using big images or other media files, that they're only as big as they have to be for the area that you're going to display them on your website.
Right.
Because oftentimes you are having to make a decision and a trade-off between high resolution and high quality and high speed.
All right. So Jason may have more to add to this. Some great resources that I found to improve site speed: pingdom.com, Google Analytics. You can go in and actually assess your site speed, and they'll give you specific suggestions to improve site speed. And QuickSpread also has a really good guide on how to improve SEO and site speed. So it's really important to remember that site speed is not just about SEO. It also can hurt your conversion rate optimization because it contributes to potentially higher bounce rate, which is ultimately going to lower your conversions. So site speed is very, very crucial.
Absolutely. Now, one site that I found a lot of success on with measuring site speed is gtmetrics.com. Now, I'll include the links to all these sites we're talking about in the description down below.
And there's also a video that Jason did on Guess the Test, and he talks more about the importance of site speed, so you can check that out.
Absolutely.
All right, and last but not least, my final proven principle is related to the anchoring effect. And the anchoring effect is a really interesting principle. It's basically a cognitive bias in which people rely on the first piece of information that they're offered or given to make decisions. And I intentionally included this as the very last piece so that you would remember it the most. So the way that the cognitive bias comes across, this is a test, a real life test that was done for a European site in the Netherlands for T-Mobile, which is a large phone company in Europe. And here they had customers going in to select their data plan. Customers could either choose a 500 megabyte data plan or internet speed for 1750 euros, and the options went down from there. Everything became slower or less, fast and less expensive. In this version, they had the free version, but it was the slowest presented first, and everything became increasingly expensive. Now, Jason, I've given you a little bit of a hint here already. Which version do you think won? The one with the most expensive at the top, or the one with the cheapest at the top?
I would say the least expensive.
Least expensive at the top?
Yeah, because that
Okay.
creates the impression that they're that they have inexpensive products and therefore good value.
Okay. And I throw that out to our listeners as well. Go ahead and take your best guess and see which one you think won. Either version A, most expensive at the top, or version B, least expensive at the top. So Jason, you are actually wrong in this case. Your logic makes a lot of sense, and that's originally what the company thought as well. Let's put our best foot forward and show the value that we offer and the value we present. But interestingly, the cognitive bias of what's called the anchoring effect postulates that when you see a reference price like 500 megabytes for 1750, that's going to anchor what you perceive everything else to be relative to that price. So it sets the bar, it sets the tone for the rest of the prices. And in this case, when the most expensive price was presented first with the fastest internet speed, it made everything else seem comparatively less desirable. All of a sudden, 50 megabytes, even though it's free, it doesn't seem nearly as appealing as 500 megabytes for only 1750.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, when you kind of think about it from that cognitive bias. So it's a really, really interesting trick or principle that you can implement on yourself, or I suggest testing before you implement, looking especially at pricing charts. And you'll go to so many websites, and I see it all the time now because I'm aware of this principle. They present the cheapest one first in a series of prices, and it goes up in ascending order to the most expensive price. And every time I see that, I'm tempted to write them and say, have you tested that? Because I'm pretty certain that if they flip that order around and they put the most expensive first, they'd be able to anchor the price so that everything else looked comparatively cheaper and comparatively more attractive. So in this case, simply switching the order from most to least expensive increased the number of people checking out with the most expensive plan by 34%. And as a result, this change translated to a huge increase, 14.9% increase in overall orders. So that had an enormous effect for a company that's probably pulling in millions of dollars in revenue every month. So simply by reordering something from top to bottom, most to least expensive. So I definitely urge you to consider testing that for your own website. It's the last but not the least most important principle you'll probably take away from this presentation. You want it to be the first thing customers see when they hit your site, and then they can reference everything else relative to it. Everything else looks less desirable when your most expensive option is presented first. And the other thing that I really encourage you to do is think about and apply other psychological theories like the anchoring effect to persuasively motivate your viewers and your web visitors to take action. And when you do so, think about the persuasion effect, which is a term that Robert Cialdini coined, in which you set up the situation, or you kind of open the doors or the windows to get people more receptive to your offer before you actually go in with the offer. And you can do that by using imagery and text to set the tone for your future persuasive prose and copy that you use. And that is really it. So thank you very much. I hope you found this useful and beneficial. I hope the principles can be applied and taken to help you make your website's conversion funnel flow into a revenue stream bubbling with profit. And I'm here to answer any questions and to guide you along the way. The digital marketing resource that I founded, guessthetest.com, provides a whole bunch of A/B tests like this where you can take your best guess and see if you win, then apply the findings to inspire your own digital marketing success. And I'm happy to answer any questions in person anytime. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll be leaving a link to Deborah's website, guessthetest.com, in the description down below, as well as in a pinned comment. And in the meanwhile, I'd like to thank you, Deborah, for sharing your valuable knowledge, with the audience here on YouTube. So if you have any questions, you can also feel free to post them in the comments section down below, and I'll make sure to get Deborah's attention to make sure we step in and give you an answer. Or if it's a popular question we see a lot of people asking, we might even come back and do a whole new video for you on that. Now, also, if you found
Sounds
Deborah's
great.
information helpful, make sure you hit that like button. And if you want to see more, make sure you subscribe and ring the notification bell. Now, remember, you're awesome. So shine your awesomeness for the world to see. This has been Jason from Radiant Freedom, joined by Deborah O'Malley from Guess the Test. And bye for now.